So I have never raided in my life except for Raid Shadow Legend, but we're not going to talk about that because they're not sponsoring this video. We're going to talk about MMO raids and the 24-man type, the big beastie ones. So throughout my gaming life, I've heard of people doing raids in MMOs, and while I've dabbled in MMOs, it's content I just never got around to doing. I never had enough friends to make a major raid. I was never part of a guild that had enough players or coordination to do a raid. And so these things always felt out of reach. And I was really excited at the chance of finally trying a raid, but also intimidated because I heard these things were just so it required so much mass coordination, and one player messing up could ruin it for everyone, that going into Final Fantasy XIV's first raid, the Crystal Tower, felt daunting, and I wasn't sure what to expect. In fact, I almost kind of just stumbled into it until my mods took me aside, had an intervention, and they're like, listen here, Mr. Streamer Sir Hey Jay, you need to talk to us and communicate what you want to do, because we're not just gonna zippity bop a 24-man raid like that. It was the first time I had seen my community get so serious about the content here. And so, respectfully, I told them what the plan was. We set a date, and it gave them over a week to start coordinating the community. And it took just about the entire week to fill the 24-man slot. Now, what is wild is I think in the old WoW days, there was a greater number. I don't know. This sounds crazy. I don't know if there were 64-man raids or if I'm just thinking of the Nintendo 64, where everyone was throwing the number 64 around everything. I don't know, but overall, not to spoil the whole journal here, but it was a good experience, and I saw other people doing the raid also enjoying themselves in ways that they never really got the chance to, because what we did is we did a minimum item level raid, which means we experienced the raid at its intended difficulty as much as possible. This is a 10-year-old raid. From what I understand, it's really hard to recreate the original experience, but we did the best we could with what we had. And it took us 4 hours. It was a whole stream night. What I liked about this was not only that there was the team-based aspect of it, but this was some of the best, concise storytelling in Final Fantasy XIV up to this point. Remember, I've only done A Realm Reborn. I hadn't seen the end of A Realm Reborn yet. So Crystal Tower was the biggest chunk of story that just kept flowing in story beats that was actually also interesting. What is this big Crystal Tower doing out here? Why should we care about it? Why is it so mysterious? The more we unveiled about it, the more richness the story had. It pretty much had me hooked the moment that I saw, what is this massive crystal? Oh, it's got a defense mechanism. Okay, let's go unlock that. And as I learned that this was a multi-stage raid, which I don't know if that's how they all are usually, that too I found was really interesting. It's just kind of really fleshes out and pads out the content. I think that this was delivered in patches, so if I would have done this at launch, to my understanding, there would have been months between the different parts, but I did it all back to back, which some parts didn't flow as well, where they're like, oh, that was a fun part. Let's recollect after we gathered some data. And then it goes quest complete. And then the quest is available. The next quest is available right away. And he's like, oh, well, I guess we're ready now. And it's like, you literally took 2 breaths, but okay. The Crystal Tower had 3 parts. We got the Labyrinth of the Ancients, Circus Tower, or Circus Tower, however you want to say it. And then the World of Darkness, all very cool parts to it. We got introduced to our main character for this quest series called Grahatia, our Mikote extraordinaire. So let's talk about the raid. We have our 24 players divided into 3 teams. My 3 generals, we got Blue, we got Takashi, we got Yumel. Each of them are leading 8-man teams. I'm in Team Blue. We were on voice chat, the 4 of us. And so everybody on stream in the other teams could listen to their commanders through the stream, which wasn't optimal because there was a little bit of lag that way. But somehow it worked out. And it was such a focused experience where, at first we were goofing off. And in fact, I was worried that this was just going to be a messy, chaotic stream. I'm always hesitant to bring people on stream because it's one thing to watch someone talking on stream. It's another thing when you can't see all these other people and all you're hearing are voices. That's my take on it. I just prefer not a crowded space on streams. But the mods knew what they had to do. They knew that they had to, not goof off too much while they were on stream. And it was so tactical. It's like, all right, we're going to go here. We're going to do this. And then I was like, all right, I see that. Okay, hitting number 3 now. And the communication was just so it was such a good team building exercise. And I say this as someone who never really did many team camps, leadership camps, things like that. So I don't think I got to experience this where a lot of other people probably do get to experience this. I'm assuming if you go in the military, this is probably military drills 101. You got to communicate with your squad. So that was cool. And even so this is funny. As soon as we get in, we get the rundown, we go into the dungeon, and it's like, okay, this is going to be a trash mob. We're going to go in, we're going to attack, and we're all like pumped. We're like, yeah, let's do this. We've been waiting for a week. First trash mob, let's go and wipe. So it was a very humbling experience. And what happened, from what I understand, is there wasn't coordination yet between the tanks. The tanks didn't aggro equally. So we came back humbled. We're like, all right. Now we started putting numbers, or the commanders, as they will call them, started putting numbers and letters on the scene before we entered the fight, which was really good organization on their part. So they're like, all right, tank A, you go aggro that. Tank B, you aggro that. Tank C, we're aggroing this. And it was clean. It was good. We got through the first trash mob. Congratulations, everyone. Next up, we had the Bone Dragon, which this thing was... All of the bosses in these raids all had an interesting mechanic. So at first I was like, oh, let me figure it out, and then we'll probably wipe, and then we'll go back. We did that a few, like on these first few bosses. I was like, oh man, I've got 4 hours to get through Crystal Tower. We don't have the time for me to make mistakes, and I am not learning fast enough. I'm kind of too thick and dumb. So I decided, you know what, just tell me what the strategy is. Tell me what we got to do. And honestly, it was a way more pleasant experience than just going in like, what's the boss gonna do? And even when the strategy was explained, executing it wasn't always that easy. We still wiped a lot of times. So with the Bone Dragon, for example, I learned that like you kill the dragon, and then I think there's like all these bone skeletons that you have to kill on their own platforms, because if you kill them on the same platform, they damage everything. And if you don't kill them properly, they all run back to the center onto the Bone Dragon, of which everybody dies from mass explosion. So there has to be a coordinated effort of you kill the dragon, you kill all the skeletons on their own platforms all around, and everything has to be done in a synchronized way for this to work. So that was also quite difficult. Then we went into some room with some praying worms. This one was not too noticeable. Like, it was a lot easier than everything else. You just smack the worms. Although we did wipe on this as well, because the tanks weren't aggroing the right thing. We switched the strategy, and it was all right after that. It was just a matter of controlling the aggro, smacking the worms. And then we made it forward to a creature called Visago, there was 3 of them, and they would fight, and then they would rotate, and we just had to like keep on our dudes, from what I remember. Cool design. Also, this was more manageable. We moved forward to probably one of the most iconic boss fights in Final Fantasy XIV. We had King Behemoth. This also reminded me very much of my experience fighting Behemoth in Monster Hunter World. This one too took a while. So I was stationed at a tower. My responsibility was when the tower was glowy red, I had to smack it and keep it not glowy red. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was just hitting King Behemoth. And every now and then when he would summon Meteor or anything, I had to go like hide behind some rocks. So there was a lot of things to pay attention to, and like, oh, the tower's going off. Oh, Behemoth's going. Oh, I gotta go behind the rock. And all of that just created like a good sense of fun. Like there was some tension, there was some pressure, there was a lot of things to look after. That was probably one of my favorite fights in the Labyrinth of Ancients, maybe even the whole raid, just because it required so much coordination. It was the first time I really felt like I had to zoom out my camera. People say I play with my camera too zoomed in, which probably. King Behemoth fight is the fight that like made me understand, oh, I really need to be zoomed out, because I got to see the tower, I got to see what King Behemoth's doing, and I got to see what these other spawns are doing. So that was a really cool fight. And then we made it to the final dude, which is Phlegathon. So I did find out before recording this that apparently the design of Phlegathon is the Titan from Final Fantasy III, which is a Final Fantasy I actually did not play. And from what I understand, the whole Crystal Tower raid is, I think, a big reference to Final Fantasy III. Again, I don't understand any of this, but I thought it was just cool, and I wish I did play Final Fantasy III so I could understand the references and the callbacks. But Phlegathon was a cool design, but the fight itself didn't leave really anything leave any impression on me. So with the whole labyrinth cleared, we finally make it to the base of Circus Tower. We can't get in because it's sealed. But then lo and behold, we've got our keys, Doga and Unai, who come in with a very like weird vibe to them. They're kind of creepy. They're not like moving too good. They got these red eyes. So they're probably from like the I don't even know how to say that out loud. Anyways, I tried to make a Naruto joke, but I just ruined it. So yeah, they got red eyes. Clear, I guess that all Alligans had red eyes. We learned very quickly that these are clones from like 5,000 years ago. And then they open the door because they have the blood of royalty in them. Now, at this point, we already know Graha T has a red eye, and he's like, am I royalty? And it's like, this is the the lamest kind of like tease. It's like, obviously you have something to do with the Alligans, Mr. Red Eye, Mr. Character who got introduced just for this story arc. Anyway, so we go to Circus Tower. This is where we get a lot more plot. We learn more about the tower, about the Emperor. The Emperor, I'm going to bastardize his name. I think his name is, it's either Zandi or Shandi. I think you pronounce the X sh, so I'm going to say Shandi, who was like the best emperor that made the Alligans prosperous, but then he died as mortal people do, and the kingdom was pretty much going to ruins. So one dude, Anon, he's like, hey, what if we cloned our original emperor, brought him back so he can rule us properly again? Everyone's like, yeah, let's do that. And then they brought him back, but he's a clone who's a little defective, gets a little power hungry. He's like, you know what? I don't like being alive. I don't like all this rule. Let's wipe it all out. And so he decides to make like a deal with the Shadow Realm and destroy the world. That's I don't think that went quite to plan. So now we got to go smack this clone emperor who's been sleeping in a crystal tower for who knows how long. I'm saying this like but honestly, cool plot. Like this is right up my alley. I'm enjoying this. So anyways, let's go. We go into a circus tower. We got some mobs, clear the mobs. We got a boss called Scylla, which was really cool because she had ice balls, fireballs, thunderballs, and each one had to do something. So like if you had a fireball, you got to melt your friend who was an ice. If you had an ice ball, you got to cool off your fire dude. And if you have a lightning thing, you have to ground yourself by going to like the lightning pillar. That fight, I really enjoyed what you had to do. Then there was like this big boy Glacia Lobulas, just interesting name. Again, I like these big chunky bosses from a design perspective, but from a fight perspective, at this point we're starting to clean out the fights a lot like faster and easier, especially compared to the Labyrinth of Ancients. So it was just kind of just more like, oh, that's a cool design. All right, let's melt them. Then we got into the more iconic bosses, which was Anon, I basically call him the undead bard. Like he's got a lot of flair to his outfit. Props to him. He also is surrounded by, I mean, I have to say it because the chat was laughing about it, but we had this enemy called the Cum Cum, spelt with a K, and I'm just like, what? And they're like, attack the Cum Cum. I'm like, you want me to do what now? So we killed that, and then there was Shandi, and he also was not like that crazy hard of a boss or anything. He was just big chunky boy with some big special attacks. The tank kept him busy, and as a DPS, I was just smacking away on the back, and then when he notices me, I like go like, run away. And then I was like, well, where do we go from Circus Tower now that it's over? So we see that at the top there is a rift to the Shadow Realm, and we learned that that's where we got to go to like end this for good, because Shandi was trying to open the Shadow Realm to unleash all the Shadow Beasts and destroy the world. Off we go, a little bit of story exposition, come back. There's a whole guy I'm not mentioning here because he was boring as heck. Basically, like this whole squad that we have come together with this Graha Tia, we're called NOAA, which is an acronym for something I didn't write because it wasn't important. And there was this other guy who never came with us, but he kept giving us orders, and I forget his name. It's something, I think it's like something bro. He talked so much and provided no value in his words and talking. He's the guy that you go back to base to get the story moving forward all the time. And I really did not like talking to that guy. He just went on forever. It's like, why are you here? You're doing nothing. You're slowing us down. Please stop talking. So then we got the World of Darkness. This one really felt like kind of attack on stage 3 of just like, yeah, you're in the Dark World. This felt very endgame Final Fantasy and just like, Trash Mob, remember that boss? They're back as Trash Mob. Just kill everything. The only really interesting things of note here was Cerberus. That was an interesting fight because I think he like eats everybody at the end, which was interesting. And the Cloud of Darkness, which was a pretty iconic boss. What I liked and what I forgot to mention through this whole thing is Nero. Nero was probably like my trump card to all of this. I'm a sucker for villain redemption arcs, and Nero is not redeemed yet. But he is showing signs that he could be a villain that goes on the redemption arc, which is my jam. So I had no idea that mystery man that I met in Mordona was Nero. So at first we got that reveal, I think at the end of the Labyrinth of the Ancients. And then he like takes it off and he looks so cool without his armor. I'm like, oh man, Nero, you should have never worn that armor. You look way better as a casual dude. And he's all like power hungry. He's like, I'm going to get the power of this crystal. And it's like, oh yeah, that's right. You're a good villain. But then at the end, he like, when we're all going into the World of Darkness, it's because the clones got sucked in there. And Nero, like, I know he kind of selfishly wanted like the power. So that's why he's going in there. But through that, it seems like he realized, you know, it's not all about the power. And he almost like crystallized, and Sid saved him. He's like, I'm not going to accept this saviorness. And so I just loved how they like showed Nero. I love that he's going a little bit more neutral at this point. Still not like goody two-shoe, but he's not like crazy evil villain. Now he's just kind of neutral, and I'm down for that. So yeah, Nero is one of my best parts of that. After the whole thing was done, we lost the Doga and Unai sacrificed themselves, gave their blood to Graha Tia so that he could control Circus Tower, and Graha Tia decided to sacrifice himself by being the guardian of the tower, staying behind so he could seal it off and never seeing anyone again. Now, will we see this in the future? I've been told that I think this plot point does come back later, which I wish I had not seen that on the internet when I was trying to compile my notes. I just saw a mention of something comes back. So overall, just really like interesting story, interesting characters, interesting mechanic. Doing this with so many people, like it's a really cool shared experience. So raids is not like something it'd be too stressful, I think, to do like every week. But once in a while, just to do this with like the community and just share this memory together and like have a good time and like just not fail all the time. Failing sometimes is okay, but if we would have failed all the time and not made any progress, I would not be smiling as much on this journal. So that was my first experience as in a raid. I think it was a pretty solid one to start with. Oh, before I forget, I wanted to thank everyone. In fact, Blue told me, hey, don't you forget to thank everybody who made this possible for you. So let me just pull up real quick here. There's a lot of names I'm going to say here. I am probably going to bastardize a lot of these, but they definitely deserve to be called out. So thank you, everyone. Starting off with Team A, we've got Saro Vincenzo, Takashi Eventide, Bracken Wormfire, Velvet Odin, Izayoi Inaba, Hound Hellbane, Melanie Mellon, Cookton Hulls. Thank you all for making Team A. Team C, thank you to Autumn Falls, Tatiana Klaus, Duncan Jinkori Riad. What is this last name? Drakander Dulakarnian. Oh my goodness. Takina the Silim Dala. I'm so sorry. Marina Blossomfire, UML Tia, Amber Ling, and finally Team B, which was my team that I was a part of. Thank you again. Leslie Bluewater, Lula Ket, Faye Vandam, Madia Eclipsal, Kai Ichio, Chi Ramenthal, Claire Firelord, and then, of course, well, I wasn't. I'm not going to thank myself. Once again, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the photos that Blue took of our raid group that night. And thanks to all of you for being an amazing community. I'll see you on the next journal. The next thing I will be sharing is, of course, my entry into Heaven's Ward, but also we're going to be talking about coils, whatever that is. I think it's a dungeon or a duty. It's apparently like really hard optional content. So something coils, I'll be talking about that in a journal or two from now. I'll see you then or on stream. And until next time, keep it classy.